How do you describe the dating scene in 3 words?
I have one word.
One word? Go for it.
And I've used this word so many times. Absolutely shambolic. Well, that's 2 words, but
What do you think is a problem with the scene today that wasn't a problem, let's say, 30, 40 years ago?
social media. Always social media.
Facts.
Always.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's brought some amazing positives, but also there are like some pitfalls with that. Yo guys, welcome back to another episode on my channel. I'm sitting in this spot, which means I've got a great conversation lined up for you today. You know, on this channel, we like to talk about all things dating and seeing what we can do to attract the kind of person and relationship that we want. So without further ado, please welcome Alaina to the show.
Hi.
Welcome, Alaina. How you doing today?
I'm all good. How are you?
I'm all right, man. I'm all right. She was just telling us, girls doing a law degree out here, about to graduate. They're about to get a fire lawyer into the industry. Watch out. It's got to be done. So I want to jump straight in, Alaina.
Perfect.
So tell us your age or your age range. And one thing a guy should know about you if you want to take you on a date.
Okay, so I'm 21. And if a guy were to take me on a date, one thing that he should know is just, be himself, be comfortable, just let's vibe off each other and see what we can do.
Okay. Is there anything particularly like you look for when you go on a date with a guy?
I think somebody who is emotionally intelligent, I would say 110%, because I think I'm quite an emotional person. I understand my emotions quite well.
Yes.
So somebody who can kind of match that is what I'm looking for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Have you always been aware of like the emotional intelligence side of like yourself and maybe even your friends and stuff like that?
Definitely. From a young age, and I feel like this might tie into like having albinism. I think just being aware of like my emotions, other people's emotions. I think I've just carried that through my whole life. So yeah.
I can imagine, and we can talk about albinism in a minute as well, but I can imagine kind of growing up, there was a level of not even just survival, but also to thrive. There's a level of maturity and awareness and maybe even spiritual growth that you would have had to do because, the world is what it is.
Absolutely.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. I would definitely agree with you.
So for those of us that don't know, what is albinism?
So albinism is a genetic skin condition which impacts the hair, skin and eyes, and it limits the production of pigment. So this is why I just have pale skin, blonde hair and grey eyes.
Okay. Now, you don't have to talk about anything you don't want to. But I do have to ask, because she's a young, attractive woman. Have you felt that with albinism, it has, I don't say aided attraction? Like, have you found that it's helped in terms of garnering a lot of attention, positive and maybe, when I say negative, maybe guys, want to date you but for the wrong reasons, like all of this stuff, like maybe even like a fetish or, they're like, oh, I've never been with a girl like you before, etc. Or has it been more guys like, oh, I just kind of find you beautiful in that sense? What's your experience been?
I think it's been a bit of both. I think some guys have just been curious to be like, okay, this is somebody that I've not really come across before, like what's going on over there? And then it's kind of, as I've dated throughout like growing up and stuff, I've been able to kind of figure out what kind of red flags there are when it does come to like there being a fetish of albinism.
Yes.
So I think trial and error in that kind of respect. But yeah, it's just been a bit of both really.
Yeah. So from your experience, how have you been able to tell whether a guy is like into you because he just thinks you're, an attractive girl or because there's a level of fetishizing there?
I think you just have to look at somebody's actions. So if, they are consistent, etc., then that's kind of how you know, okay, maybe they are being serious. But if somebody's just kind of like hot and cold or like, being here the next minute, not there the next minute, then I do get a little bit suspicious. And I think anybody should be suspicious with that type of behavior anyways.
100%.
But for me, I kind of apply it in the sense of, okay, if they're not being consistent and, showing that level of interest that I think everybody deserves, then that's kind of when I start to think, okay, cool. Maybe you're just interested in dating somebody like me or not just me. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, 100%.
Loving the idea of someone for sure. And it's the whole consistent thing as well. I feel like that's definitely an indicator of just whether someone is taking us with serious intention or not. Do you know what I mean? There's something I always say that there's a difference between someone wanting you and choosing you. wanting you comes from a place of desire, but choosing you comes from a place of intention. Do you know what I mean? And especially, you know, most guys actually struggle, believe it or not. Most guys aren't out here getting dates like that. But many women are wanted, but sometimes it'd be hard to know for guys actually choosing. I'm going to put the floor to you. Is there something you want to talk about today?
I think, where can I start?
She got a list, baby. She's like, let me get my book out.
Like, let me think. I think, do you know what? In university, I think I can speak for a lot of people, it can be quite difficult to date due to like everybody having so many different intentions. What would you say is the best way to move forward in like the dating climate right now? Because as you know, it must be shambolic. So, I mean...
People out here in the streets.
Literally.
The streets are on fire.
So what would you say would be like, especially for like Black women maybe, what would you say would be the best like kind of way forward in terms of navigating the dating scene?
Of course. So the first question I would ask is, are you looking to explore and have experiences, or are you looking to date with intention with someone that would potentially lead to marriage?
Okay.
So answer that.
I think for me, I'm a very serious person. I would always say that I've got a lot to lose, where I'm just, you know, I'm about to finish my law degree and I'm modeling as well. And there's the whole social media aspect. So I'm just looking for somebody who's like more serious on the serious side. So
sure.
Yeah.
So I would say that in regards to uni, ironically, university is actually a really good place to meet a long-term partner because especially you might meet someone who's in your field. Obviously you're mixing with different people and you know a lot of people. And the thing is, without sounding too old myself, when you're still in education and in school, it feels like you're constantly meeting new people. But when you get out to the real world, your circles become very consistent and can become smaller, because if you get a job and you're in that job for 10 years, your circle of 8-9 people is going to stay that way for 10 years. Unless you obviously the friends outside of that and you make an effort in the social sound. So there's a lot of exposure at uni in terms of meeting people in person.
Of course.
And if you're dating with intention, I would say there's 3 things I would follow. I have 2 younger sisters, and this is what I'd say to them. The first thing is that recognize the difference between sexual attention and romantic intention. And this comes back to like, is he being consistent? Does he make a plan and actually show up? You know, is he actually responsive with your messages, or does he only respond when you text him something of a sexual nature? Do you know what I mean? His response time goes from 8 hours to 8 seconds.
Oh gosh.
Do you know what I mean?
All too well.
All these telltale signs. So I'd say watch out for that. And I would say that, I mean, maybe because I'm a man and I like to think I know how men work. I would say develop the physical intimacy as you're building the emotional intimacy. I think because we live in a very sexualized, liberated society, a lot of people out here having one night stands, being very physical and stuff. And if that's what you want to do, cool, you do you. But I think because men and women emotionally bond and connect and invest in different ways, I think what happens a lot is a woman will be physical with a guy and she's getting more emotionally invested, but he isn't, because men bond differently. Women tend to, and this generalization, not every woman all the time, but the physical intimacy tends to be more emotional for women. I mean, biologically, you know, when you do have sex with a guy and, you know, especially if you orgasm and all of that, oxytocin is released in the woman's body, which is the bonding hormone. But men don't generally bond through sex. They generally bond through vulnerability. So when a guy is like, when he opens up to you about something, and it may even seem very small for you, it could just be like, you know, you're like, oh, like, how you doing? He's like, oh yeah, I'm like, my boss is just on my case, but it's fine. It might seem like he's trying to brush it off, but he's actually showing a level of vulnerability there.
Okay.
And that's an opportunity for you as the woman to kind of be there, be like, oh, like, tell me like what's going on? How does that make you feel? Like, how does that make you feel? I'll be honest, that question is not asked to guys a lot.
Okay.
How does that make you feel? So in moments of vulnerability, that's when a guy's like, I want to keep this woman. Because men, I believe men protect women mentally and physically, but women protect men spiritually. And so when he's being vulnerable with you, that's an opportunity for you to protect his spirit. And it's the same thing as, when you choose a man, he chooses you. And we can talk about what the kind of relationship maybe you'd want to have, but if you have the traditional type where he's like in the leadership position, etc., and he provides the frame for you to thrive, etc. There may be some decisions where it could be difficult, but you recognize, as the woman in his life, this is not going to be good for you and your soul. And even though you can do it, that doesn't mean you should, because if he chooses you, he values your input. So recognize the difference between sexual attention and romantic intention. Build the emotional intimacy with the physical, not just the physical and then emotional later. And the third thing, make sure that he's in a place where he wants a relationship, because he can be a great guy. He can tick all the boxes, but if he doesn't want a relationship, that counts for naught. Does that make sense?
Been there.
Yeah. Tell me about it. What's been your experience in that sense? What have you learned?
When I would say in like my first or second year in uni, I met someone and, there were the signs, all the red flags and everything, but I was just like, you know what, maybe I should just ignore it, whatever. And looking back and with all experience and everything, I really wish that I just kind of let the situation be and just left it alone. Okay. Because now it was just the person wasn't in that mindset. And maybe on my behalf, I just didn't understand that. But, as I've kind of like matured and like, dated around and stuff, I've now been able to kind of identify that when somebody isn't in that mindset to have a relationship, then you just kind of do what's best for you as an individual and take yourself out of that situation.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing is, I think, and I understand this, I think for a lot of women, they can feel, I'd rather have him in some way than in no way, especially if you think he's really great, right? And you think, if I walk away or leave it alone, I'm not gonna have the chance for it to become something serious, because at least if I'm there and present in his life, I can have something serious. But it's actually the opposite. So if a guy starts dating a girl and he's like, I'm not looking for anything serious, and she's like, okay, cool, I'm happy to keep this like a casual thing, then he will see her as a casual option. So when he is looking for something serious, he's likely to go elsewhere. And I see it happen all the time where, they'll be in casual and stuff, and then maybe things end because she's got to a point where she wants something, and then 2 months later, he's in a relationship with someone new. You're like, yo, what the hell happened?
Literally.
Do you know what I mean? Now, it could be that, 2 months he got to a place where he was ready, but then he's looking for at least what he sees as a serious option. And at least, especially with the work that I do with my clients as well, part of what I would say a high value woman and feminine woman is that if a guy is not aligned in the journey she wants to embark on, then she leaves it alone, because that's wasted energy for her. And actually, the girl who says, okay, I like you, I respect you, but we're not looking for the same thing, so I'm going to leave this here, that's the woman he'd come back to when he's looking for something serious. And I've seen that happen several times, because girls will be like, and it happens. I've had friends, especially when we're in our early 20s, like just graduating from drama school and all this, and really nice, homely girls that would be like wife material, and they weren't getting that much attention. And it wasn't because they weren't beautiful, but it was because guys would look and be like, oh, cool, she's wife material, but I'm not in that space yet. And then in her mid-20s, loads of guys just came, hey, I want to be exclusive with you. Hey, I see us having this marriage together, all of this stuff. She's like, it went from 0 to 100. Like before, I had no guys interested in me. Now I have like 10, 15 proposals. Do you know what I mean? So timing for guys is very important. And a lot of the time, if he likes you and he has a level of respect for you, part of him garnering that respect as a potential future is you being able to say, I know I like you and I want this, but I'm able to say no because we're not in alignment. And that makes him go, that's someone I respect, and that's the kind of woman I want to choose later on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Definitely.
Do you know what I mean? Have you found it hard to say no to like a guy that you were involved with?
I think when I was, again, at the beginning of uni, 100%, but now I'm just kind of like, I have too much on my plate to kind of carry on something that isn't, what I want. So if I'm able to just say, do you know what, we're not in the same kind of mindset.
Yes.
I do rate you, you know, we're both very cool individuals, but at the same time, I have to do what's best for me.
Yeah.
And, you know, if later on down the line you come back, one thing that I will say is if somebody does come back, I'm less likely to be open to it.
I understand that.
But at the same time, I understand, you know, with what you were saying, timing, etc. So
yeah. I mean, look, God loves a trier. If he comes back, you know, and you're like, hey, either I'm with someone amazing, or then maybe we can try something. Let me ask you something. Let's see. What would you say? How do you describe the dating scene in 3 words?
I have one word.
One word? Go for it.
And I've used this word so many times. Absolutely shambolic. Well, that's 2 words, but
just shambolic. What do you think is a problem with the scene today that wasn't a problem, let's say 30, 40 years ago?
Social media. Always social media.
Facts.
Always.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's brought some amazing positives, but also there are like some pitfalls with that. What do you think is a pitfall that you've had with it?
I think with social media, it's almost as if you see one person onto the next, you see another person onto the next. Yeah. And it's kind of like dating has become almost like an enterprise now. And it's like, I understand that, okay, cool, you know, with everything going on, fine. But at the same time, we are individuals. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So taking like, I wouldn't say it's like dehumanizing dating, but I think taking that human aspect away from it has been quite damaging. And with, you know, the aid of social media in doing that, it's just been, you know.
It's definitely become quite consumerism. I think quite consumerism in that sense. And I completely get it in terms of it seems like there's endless amount of options and abundance, etc. But honestly, that tends to be more for women than for guys.
Okay.
Because most guys really don't have that many options, is the truth. So I guess really it's kind of given more optionality for women in that sense. I mean, have you found that you've been able to explore more options you would like to because of social media and stuff, or?
I think it's, for me, it's made it slightly harder because I'm quite picky. So it's like, okay, I see like maybe I'll be interested in somebody, you meet them, whatever, and then you just realize that you're not on the same page, and then you have to like go back to square one and do it over and over and over again. Sure. And then, you know, you just kind of give up, I guess. Yeah. So, what are you picky about? I think, again, it all just comes down to somebody just being able to voice their opinions and voice their emotions, because I was in a situation with a guy and I'd always ask him, I was like, you need to voice your opinions and your feelings and emotions. He was like, oh, well, you know, I went through something and now I just don't want to do that. And I was like, but why? And he would always kind of push back and say, it's okay, like we can just move on to something else. And from that situation, I was like, that's definitely not something that I want at all. Okay, sure. Do you have because I have to ask, do you have the physical standard? I think with the way that I see things, and this is going to be a very interesting thing to say, I've always been the type of person where I do go for more personality, because the way I like view everything is, coming back to albinism, it's like people have given me the grace to look past that. So I want to put that out there to look past somebody's looks or whatever. So I'm attracted to somebody's like, you know, what's the word? What's the word again? Energy. There we go. Energy. So yeah, that's definitely where I am mentally. So okay. Do you think do you feel people, when you say people have like looked past your albinism, do you think guys have had to look past it? Or do you think, I guess this comes back to the question about, you know, so you know when is it alopecia when people have different pigmentation? Oh, vitiligo. Vitiligo. Yeah. So like, I think for some people, especially women, they might think, oh, like guys will have to look past this and stuff. But some guys are like, no, I just think it's gorgeous, like it's beautiful. So do you feel like guys have had to look past it, or it has been more of a like, oh, I just think it's a gorgeous thing? Do you know what I mean? I think maybe this is something that I kind of need to deconstruct, but in my head, I'm thinking, okay, and this kind of goes on to like a past situation from when I was a lot younger, and I'll kind of go into that a little bit later. Yeah. But in my head, I'm thinking, okay, so this person has like looked past me having albinism, as opposed to maybe they just might find it attractive or whatever, or they're just fine with it and they just see me as a normal person. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah.
What were you talk about when you said that experience when you were younger?
So when I was in like, I think I spoke about this on my TikTok. When I was in secondary school, there was like a bunch of guys in the year above, and they like pretended to be interested in me. And obviously at that age, you are quite young.
Yes.
And I've kind of carried that throughout being in my early 20s.
Okay.
And I now, when a guy does show interest, I'm like, okay, cut the cameras. Like, are you lying? Are you trying to embarrass me? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's kind of that aspect. So when they like pretended to express interest, in my head, I was like, okay, they're trying to embarrass me. And I've taken that and carried that all the way up to now. And I'm always very, very like cautious when somebody does express interest in me.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I completely get that. And that makes sense. That 100% makes sense. Do you think, has at any point, you don't have to answer this, has any point where you thought a guy wasn't serious, but he actually was?
I think there's been one particular instance where that has happened. But I think the way that I navigate things is what's meant to be will be. And I've acted in a way which might have been, in the long run, I've protected myself maybe.
Sure.
So I don't necessarily regret, you know, that situation. But at the same time, it's kind of like, you know, it's unfortunate that it did happen that way. Yeah,
100%. How's it been in terms of with other women with, because it's weird, it's, in your women's, you tell me, right? But I've seen where, you know, girls could be friends and stuff, but the second it's about guys, or guys taking an interest in, you know, he's interested in me but not you, he's interested in you but not me, and all of this stuff, it can create some kind of tensions. And especially, you know, with a level of, you know, having albinism, you know, you obviously you're very fair in that sense, and stereotypically, especially amongst kind of European standards, that's like on the high end of like beauty standards. So has that ever affected or played into your relationship with like maybe female friends and guys taking an interest or anything like that?
I don't think so. I think
that's good.
All of the friends that I have are, one, very, very beautiful and just so understanding. And I would say we're interested in different guys as well. So having that crossover doesn't really happen.
Okay.
So yeah, everybody that I'm friends with, all the girls I am friends with, are so understanding and so lovely. And that's never really been a situation that I've
That's
been
good in. That the crossover doesn't happen. That's definitely good that the crossover doesn't happen. Is there something you would ask men today?
Something that I would ask men today?
Yeah.
I think, would you still like there to be an element of like traditionality within dating? Because I think now everything's a lot different to how it was.
Very true.
I think back then, you know, you would court a girl, all of this kind of stuff, but then now it's like, oh, let's link. And I'm just kind of like, no.
Yeah. No, I hear that. Do men want an element of traditionality? Yes. If the benefits of the traditionality are there as well.
Okay.
So for example, some men have the experience of where he'll be expected to provide and protect, but then he's not given the level of respect and I use this term not in a dictatorship way, but in a term of to look after way, a level of authority.
Okay.
So for example, this example I usually give, if let's say we're walking back home from the station, right? And let's say, you know, we're in like more traditional dynamic. I have a cough, guys. I don't know what's going on. My throat. Okay, so let's say we're walking back from the station. We have a traditional dynamic. And let's say, okay, I've decided we're going to walk in this path to get home, and you're like, oh no, there's a shortcut, we can go through this dark alleyway, park, whatever, that'll be fine, but it's a shortcut, right? And let's say you're bursting through the toilet, and I'm gonna be like, I respect that might be a shortcut, but actually we're gonna go this way. Now, in a traditional sense, even though you want to take that way, you would follow my leadership.
Okay.
Because in a traditional sense, I'm responsible for your safety.
Okay.
Right? Like if you're my woman, I'm responsible for your safety.
Okay.
If you go, now I'm going to take that path, I'll be like, okay, cool. You can take that path, but I'm not responsible for your safety anymore.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Okay.
Because and I think some men have experienced where she wants to take that path and still make him responsible for her safety, even though his decision is to go this way.
Okay.
So I think men are happy to, I think more men are happy to be more traditional than women realize, but I think a lot of the time men have experienced where the certain benefits that come with that, because there's pros and cons to everything, right?
Of course.
Certain benefits that come with that, if he expresses he wants those things, it's seen as patriarchal, misogynistic, etc., etc. And don't get me wrong, there are some guys who are those things. But if you want to receive traditional relationship, you have to give in a traditional way.
Okay, interesting.
Like if you go on a first date, do you expect a man to pay?
I think first date, yes.
Sure. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's traditional.
True.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Exactly. Okay.
Are there many guys in your uni from your experience that are traditional or not really?
I think it's traditional up until the point where it comes to like the first couple of dates. So if you've gone on a couple of dates with somebody, then the guy will pay, etc. But then I think as time goes on, it then becomes this whole like 50-50 thing. And I think as well, there's the element of the fact that we are students. So,
of course.
You know what I mean?
You're out here earning the big bucks.
Yeah. Exactly. So there is that aspect to it. But at the end of the day, it kind of is like the effort that counts. And one thing is, I was in a situation where it was my birthday and I was talking to this guy. And for me, it would have been nice if he got me something, whatever, and he didn't. And he was just kind of like, oh, well, I was going to or whatever, but I just didn't think that you would be impressed by it. And I turned around and I just said, I don't care if it was like £2 roses from like wherever. I would have been so happy. Do you know what I mean? Because my friends got me roses and stuff like that, and they were just £2 roses, and I was so happy with that.
Yeah.
And it's just, for me anyway, I can only speak for myself.
Yeah.
It is the effort that does count, and it doesn't have to be like a big elaborate gift. And I feel like we're so used to seeing that on social media where it's like grand gestures and all that kind of stuff. But for me, it's just like the thought that does count 100%.
I hear that. Do you feel, I guess in your circles, do you feel like women are wanting to kind of be in a more traditional relationship, or do you think they want a more kind of modern, kind of equal one?
I think what I'm realizing is that as you grow up, you kind of want that more traditional aspect of like a relationship. But I think for me and where my friends are all at, we're still kind of in this whole aspect of, okay, cool, like we do want this modern aspect. But I do think that once you do get to a certain age, you are like, okay, maybe this isn't working out for me.
Why do you think they get to a certain age and they feel it's not working out?
I think everybody just gets serious. Do you know what I mean? Everybody's like, oh wow, I'm old now, whatever, and it's time to kind of like settle down and really look more traditionally. And I think, for me anyway, I was raised in a way where my voice and opinion does matter, and that is something that I kind of carry into my relationships as well.
Of course.
But what I've found is that guys who are in that kind of traditional mindset would kind of not be familiar with that in a sense.
It's a nice way to put it. Not familiar with it.
And there becomes this kind of like pushback between both of us, and then it just doesn't work out. And it's like, I'm obviously so thankful that my parents have raised me in a very because I'm Nigerian and they're quite liberal parents for being Nigerian. So
okay, I feel you, boy. We're all Nigerians in this room. Yes.
So, them being liberal and actually listening to me and my opinions and stuff, and me transferring that into my relationships, that is something that I do hold quite dearly. So
yeah, 100%. I even think this is just my opinion. Maybe it's because of how I've been raised, but I think if a man chooses you, it's by default he should value your opinion. Okay. Because it's his job to serve the relationship, and you're the other half of that relationship. So if there's a decision to be made, he's gonna be like, what do you need from this? Because that should be taken into account for whatever you both decide to do. And I completely understand about the wanting to be traditional later on. I think a lot of the time what guys will hear from that is that a woman might want to be very modern in her ways, etc., when she's young and she has all the power to kind of explore that level of abundance, to be very discerning. And then when it gets to a point that she wants to settle down, etc., a lot of guys feel, well, you haven't been traditional at the point when I wanted you, and now you're asking me to be traditional for you at a point just when you want. And it's, there are some girls who are I guess quite traditional when they're younger. And so, because I think if you're going to be a man, you're going to take responsibility for someone. I think you are, in my opinion, I think you are taking on a lot for another human being, right? That doesn't mean they're like a helpless child in that sense. But at least the way I see it, you're kind of there to be her rock. If anything goes wrong, she can call you, etc. And, I guess providing frame. But I guess what would you say to the guys who feel like they feel that, oh, if a woman's trying to be traditional later, she's just trying to get the best of both worlds?
I don't think so. I think one thing that you have to understand is, I think for a lot of women who are my age, we're, especially from my background, we are very career driven. And I think my parents have always said, education, education, education. And I think the reason why I've been single for so long is because I've just been focused so much on that.
Yes.
So it's kind of like where love and relationships has not taken a back seat, but it's just not been in the forefront. And it's like, now I'm graduating and now I'm getting into the wider world. So now I'm kind of like, okay, it's kind of the next phase of my life. And I've gotten, all the tools that I need to go into the world. It's just, that one last thing that, now I have the capacity to move through. Yeah,
100%. I hear that. I think one thing that is worthwhile to think about, I think sometimes, a lot of us, we have this image of, okay, by the time I'm 30, I'm going to be here. I'm going to have this house, have this marriage, have this kid. My job will be here. And I think anything worth having does come with sacrifice. And we can have anything we want, but we can't have everything we want. So if a lot of the time, if you, for example, if we imagine, let's say we have career and let's say family life, right? And if we have different levels, and let's say level 1 to 5, level 5 of your career is you're at the top of your game, you're earning the big bucks, you're the CEO, you're the partner. And then level 5 family life is you've got the husband or wife, you've got the kids, you've got the house, you've built that. To get to level 5 on each one takes a lot of time, dedication, and sacrifice. And I think what can happen is I think we have to choose which one we want at one time. I don't think there are going to be points where, okay, if we want to get to level 5 in our career, we have to dedicate 7, 8, 9, 10 years to that. And if we want to get to level 5 in our family life, we might have to dedicate 5, 6, 7 years to that. Do you know what I mean? I think what can happen is people can choose to do one, not maybe recognizing that, okay, this is level 2, level 3, but this is still at level 1. And that's okay. But then understand that, okay, cool. Once you've decided to prioritize this, you are starting from level 1. And I think sometimes what can happen is men as well, to be honest, not just women, but men as well, people, they get to their late 20s and they've super focused on their career, which is great. And maybe they're doing really well, but they're like, oh, okay, I'm ready to start having a family. But then they're wondering within 2 years, why am I not on level 5 family yet? Why don't I have the wife or husband already? And it's like, well, because you're starting from ground zero. Does that make sense? And I think if you even work backwards, let's say you want to be married with a child by 35, right? So if you're married with a child by 35, you probably started, and assuming most people who start trying for a child, it takes them anywhere between 6 to 18 months to get pregnant. So let's say you get pregnant before, for the year before. So that means you started trying when you were 34. Let's assume that you're married. Do you want to be married?
Yes.
Let's assume that you're married before you start trying to have kids. So let's assume that you married at 34. That means you probably got engaged when you were 32. So anywhere between 12 to 24 months that people have the wedding from engagement.
Of course.
So you got engaged at 32. Now, most people, especially guys, they want to have a relationship with a woman for at least a few years before popping the question, right?
Of course.
So if you got engaged at 32, you might have met him when you were 28. So To be married with a child by 35, that's anywhere between a 4 to 7 year process. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Now that's the average, I would say. And, you know, it does happen where you'll meet them in January and they're engaged by October and then they're pregnant by next January. That does happen. But I think it's really important for all of us, and I'm just saying this because like I turned 30 recently. And I'm just saying this in the sense of recognizing paths to take and what comes with those paths and just what I've learned, especially. And as long as we know what comes with the path that we take, then it's fine. I think a lot of us we think we're taking a path, but we're slowly moving along the other path at the same time, but it just doesn't work that way. Do you know what I mean? What do you think about what I've said? Does that make sense? Or are you kind of like, nah, fuck you, kid, you're wrong? Maybe I am.
You know, I hear what you're saying and it definitely does make sense on some levels. And I think for a lot of women, it's definitely in this day and age, there is still just that drive as well, just to like career.
Sure.
And again, it's quite difficult to balance both, especially if you're doing something like medicine, law, engineering, etc. I'm not trying to like discredit other degrees, but you know, degrees
they are very demanding. Yes,
very, very demanding.
Yes.
But when you're trying to balance both, it is quite difficult. And I've, you know, experienced as well, like, you know, in the second half of my second year up until now, I've just not had the time to like, you know, meet new people and go on dates. And it's just kind of been like, well, now I'm like about to graduate and I'm not in a relationship. Do you know what I mean? And now it's just like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%. And by all means, that is not me saying that people shouldn't pursue their career, women shouldn't. You absolutely should. And in a sense of, I think it's in your own interest to be a capable individual. But I guess to be fair, I guess this might be where dating apps come in, where you don't have to meet people out. So what's your experience been with that? Oh, okay, there it is. You saw the face. You saw the face.
Dating apps are so scary. so scary.
Go on.
Never again.
Never again,
Never
you know.
again.
Well, you just tried it once or you tried it for a
Like,
couple of years, like, I'm done, I'm out.
I tried it for like a couple months and I was like, this is such a scary place to be.
No way. What did you try and what happened?
I think everybody tries Hinge.
Yeah.
The thing is with Hinge, it's just the people on there just aren't.
Not it?
No.
Like you don't feel that chemistry with them, you're not drawn to them? What is it?
It's like I just don't find people that I'm aligning with. And it's like, okay, cool, like on the surface level you might like have similar interests and stuff.
Yes.
But then as time goes on and you want to explore like a deeper connection, like, you know, see if you guys are on the same level emotionally.
Yes.
You then realize, oh my gosh, me and this person are so different. Okay. And it's like with dating apps you can almost like in life anyways, you put your best foot forward.
Of course.
But with dating apps, you can enhance that even more. And then you just get to a point where you're like, you kind of wasted your time.
Right. How have you, what have you noticed like where guys have enhanced maybe what they are compared to what they actually are in reality for you? What have you noticed?
I think it's a situation where there's been such like a disparity within like what they actually want. So what they say they want on like dating apps, it'll be like, oh, like I want a relationship, I want this, I want that. Then when you like meet and have a conversation, it's like, oh, you know, I just want to go with the flow. Those words.
Famous last words. Famous last words.
You know, and that disparity between like, you know, saying that you want a relationship to like, you know, attract women and then saying that, okay, do you know what, you're just like here for vibes. It's just, you know, you wasted my time and your time. So
yeah, I hear that. Have you ever used like they're like paid dating websites? I think eHarmony, I think OkCupid, don't quote me, I don't know. Because I think a lot of the time when you have to pay for that service, you're more likely to connect with people who are looking for something serious, because if they're just looking for casual, most of the time people won't pay for that because there are free ones to do that. Okay. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, I'm sure you would have got quite a few matches. How have you decided which guys to go on a date with from the guys you matched with?
It's kind of been, I always say like, I'm a good judge of character. So if I think me and the person have like a similar energy, or like we're from maybe a similar background or whatever, then maybe that's kind of how I would navigate if me and the person would, you know, have a good date or whatever, and that's how I would match with somebody. I think that's my way forward anyways. So,
Okay. So kind of similar foundation. Yeah, it can be hard to tell someone's energy through messaging, I think. And I think sometimes we can if you're texting them for like a week or two, you find like a natural rhythm.
Yeah.
And then you meet them in real life, and that rhythm is different, boy. That rhythm is so different. You ever been catfished before?
No, never.
So I didn't give enough a chance to be catfished by that at all. Is there something else you'd like to ask or bring to conversation today?
I mean, you already touched on it before, but what would you say is like a solid piece of advice you would give to like women my age in terms of like, you know, going forward in dating?
Yeah. With what goal? Because I think the goal will determine what I would think is the best way forward.
I think getting into a relationship.
Getting into a relationship. Yeah. I would say, recognize a man who has potential and see where you can, because everybody has strengths and weaknesses.
Of course.
Knowing what your strengths are, see how you can add value to his life.
Okay.
Because I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but women are not choosing a man who doesn't bring some kind of value to her life. And I think the mistake that a lot of us can make is that I think women can think that spending time with a guy and being intimate with a guy is adding value. And it's not. Now, for the guy who maybe doesn't really get a lot of options, and the guy who maybe doesn't have a lot of opportunity with women, that is adding value, he'll take that, but that's because that's the only way he can get that, right? But for the guy who is maybe desirable, he has the level of energy and quality, intelligence, purpose that maybe, many women would like. Kind of just spending time and having sex, he can do that with anyone. So what individual strengths do you have that brings value to not your life? And then how can you add that to his? Because if you have, as a woman, become such an asset for him, then you become irreplaceable. Okay. And even if he's young and he's on his mission and, he gets distracted by the Insta baddie or whatever, right? He'll understand that, yeah, these women are very attractive, but Alaina brings value to my life in A, B, and C. Like, she's a place of peace for me. If I'm sick, she's there for me, etc. And when you can be that level of asset for a guy who is on a mission, and I want to make that very specific because I think not every guy is on a mission, and that's okay. That's not saying he has to be, but not every man is on a mission. But usually the guys who have that strong driving purpose tends to be the kind of guy women would want. And if you can become that asset for him, he's going to be like, nah, I have to keep it around because I can't find another one like her. Yeah, that's what I would say. But does that surprise you?
I think the only thing that I would say is if, they've realized that you're the person for them, whatever, but they still want to then have their fun. Yes. At what point do you think somebody should say, do you know what? You're kind of, leading me on. Sure. And, we obviously do like each other. You might be on your mission, but you're then still in the mindset, okay, cool, well, I am still young and I still want to then have my fun. But very true. After all of that, you then want to come back. How would you kind of advise somebody to articulate that?
Advise the guy to articulate or the woman to articulate to him?
The woman.
So you want to essentially tell him, are you calling things off and saying that maybe you're open to it later? Yeah. Is that what you're saying? You're
just saying, do you know what? It's not for me. It's like, so you've understood that both of you you know, are on the same page, whatever. But then it's become clear that they're just doing whatever they want to do, and it's obvious that they will come back.
Sure.
So then how would you advise the woman to say, do you know what? I don't want to be on the back burner.
Oh, I see.
That situation.
Okay. So what I would say is we can't control what other people do.
True.
So we can't control whether someone wants to put us on their back burner.
Okay.
Now, just because they put us on the back burner, that doesn't mean that we actually are, because in order for us to be put on the back burner, that means we are still providing an option for this person.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I think it's best understanding for the woman to know for herself that, okay, maybe this is someone that may come full circle. And I have this example in my relationship. It definitely came full circle. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be open to other people.
Okay.
Because it may come where he does come back, you found a great guy and you're very happy and he's missed out. That happens. And then at that point, it's like, well, bro, you missed out on a good woman. That's on you.
True.
If she's still available when you do come back, that's a blessing and you should take it. And when he does, all the things I said, making sure that he is truly investing in you. So he's spending non-sexual time with you, right? Not the time that you're having Netflix and chill. That's not investment on him. It's when he does take you out, or you do go for a walk and you just go for a coffee and all you're doing is just talking, getting to know each other. Maybe when you play board games together, or like you're reading together, or, you know, anything, time spent outside of the sexual element, that is a man that is investing in you.
Okay.
And so I think when you maintain that standard when he does come back, because if he comes back, just be real, when he comes back, as a woman, you have the leverage to set the standard. And that's your opportunity to.
Of course.
Does that make sense?
100%, yeah.
What's something that your girlfriends, is there anything that your girlfriends come to you for advice about guys that you're like, they're always coming to me about this? I always tell them.
I think in situations where it is time to maybe end things.
Ah, yes.
My immediate reaction is block.
Block, you know.
But that's me anyways, but
sure.
What I do try and say is, you know what, like, just try and be as open and as honest as you can. Don't do this whole, oh, it's me, like, I'm just not feeling it, yada. Don't do that. Just be as straightforward as you can, because at the end of the day, like, we're all adults. So It's kind of, you've done your duty in saying, okay, this is what's happened. This is why, you know, I want to end it X, Y, Z. And that is kind of up to all of your responsibility. It's now the other person's responsibility to say, okay, I hear what you're saying, X, Y, Z. Do you know what I mean? So taking accountability for like your side of things, as opposed to like taking accountability for everybody's side of things. Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
of course. You know when you said about how there was like those red flags in that guy, and you're like, I'm gonna put that aside, etc. Because I do hear that quite often. Why does that happen? Like, why? At least for you, okay? Why did you saw those red flags initially? But you were like, nah, I'm gonna put that aside and I'm still gonna, what was it that made you do that?
I think I try and see the best in people, and maybe I do too much in terms of that. So I give people the benefit of the doubt. And what I've realized now is it's like, people know what they're doing. You know, we're not silly, we're all grown and stuff.
Yes.
So I think I've now changed my mindset in terms of, okay, you know what you were doing, you did that, you know, you weren't doing it without knowing you were doing it. So it's just being able to identify that somebody just isn't valuing your time or you as a person, and just taking yourself away from that.
Yeah, no, I hear that. Something just came to mind. One more thing that I would definitely say about kind of a woman into a relationship. Definitely have a male figure who loves you, who wants the best for you, to be part of the vetting process. What I mean is, before you decide that this is the man that you want, so it might be a father, a godfather, an older brother, that he meets him and you hear what he has to say, because men know men. Men know men. And sometimes, you know, we're always continuing to grow, but there could be things that, let's say, your dad would see that maybe you might miss.
Yeah, of
because
course.
you're a woman, and there's some things that guys know about guys that women just don't get, and vice versa. There are things about women we just don't get. But also too, because he's more experienced, he's more likely to correctly assess not just his intention, but also his path.
Okay.
Because the qualities tend to be indicators of that, you know? Like half the reason why, you know, maybe a woman will say, oh, I want a guy who's ambitious, because ambition just means future success. Ambition is supposed to be a tell sign quality of where he's going to end up. Do you see what I'm saying? So yeah, I would say have a male figure in your life that you can introduce that man to and generally hear what he has to say. That doesn't mean, you know, he may say it's not good for you, but you feel it's right. Then, you know, you make that choice and we learn. Or he may say he is good for you and you may be like, yeah, but I'm not feeling it. Fine. But I think definitely have that on board, I think, because that used to be part of, I think, especially for women back in the day, that used to be part of how they would choose the men that were good for them. And part of knowing a good man is getting advice from a good man. And I would always assume that, I'd like to think most girls would see that if they have a good relationship with their father, they would see him as a good man. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'll say the same to guys, like, you know, introduce your girl to your mom before you choose her, because she will know. She will know. Let me ask you something. Okay. Would you rather pay for a guy on the first date or sleep with him on the first date?
Pay.
You'd rather pay?
I'd rather pay. 100% I'd rather pay.
Yes. Yes. I concur. I concur. Why would you rather pay?
I think for me, I have to be emotionally there to, you know, be physical. And anyway, for me, I just know on first dates, I probably haven't, you know, been able to really get to know the person. So I would just much rather pay and just dip. Yeah.
Have you ever paid for a first date with a guy?
Never.
Have you ever paid for yourself?
No, never.
Okay. Okay. So, you know, you're trying at least half these guys out there. For sure. What were the red flags that you've learned from your previous experience that you're like, okay, if I see this, I'm not going to ignore it? May not be a deal breaker, but you'll be more cautious and aware of it.
I think with people my age, if somebody only speaks to you on Snapchat or like socials, I'm not into it. I'm really, really not into it. And I understand, like, for me anyways, you know, with doing social media and stuff, I am, you know, not always on my phone, but, you know, I do see my messages and stuff like that.
Yes.
But the way that I think, if somebody, you know, I mean, there also is like the kind of security aspect of it because people are weird.
Very true. Very, very true.
But, you know, if somebody like says, you know what, just text me, here's my number, XYZ, I'd be like, okay, cool. So this might be somebody who's more on like the serious side of things, where if a guy comes to me and says, oh, what's your Snapchat? I'm just like, okay, interesting. So when you say if they only talk to you on socials, is it mainly like if they don't ask for your direct contact, like your number and stuff like that? Yeah, I guess that's definitely more personal. It's weird. I'm past that. I'm before the generation of Snapchat and everyone like using that to communicate. And I think I was just talking to someone before you earlier on today about how now you can share your location on Snapchat. Yeah. That's weird. I feel like that's so weird. It's so like...
Who would you share that with though?
I guess like, say if you're on a night out and like you're with your friends and like somebody gets lost or whatever, that type of aspect.
Yeah,
but,
that does make sense.
There is the option to just like have it off, and I have it off because like you don't need to know where I am.
Yeah.
Like, that's really weird.
Yeah, so, of course. You said that your family Nigerian. Have you ever been to Nigeria?
When I was really, really little, I was like 2. So I do need to go back now. Like,
okay.
Absolutely.
Have you ever dated Nigerian men before?
1.
Okay. Was he like similar? When I say similar background, as in, did he come from quite a traditional family in that respect? Like, how was that? Did that match with you?
He came from more of like a traditional kind of Nigerian background. So like he was raised there and then came over here. Okay. And I was born here and I was raised here. So there was like a difference in terms of like our upbringing.
Of course. And was there I guess you just say your family kind of more open-minded or liberal in that sense. Was he open to that with you, or was he like, was it more strict?
He was open to it, but I kind of understood that it was a shift for him. And I didn't want to put him in that position, because if you have your values and your traditions, etc., who am I to say, oh, you have to change that? Do you know what I mean? Because I wouldn't want somebody to come to me and tell me, oh, you have your traditions and values, but to move forward with me, you need to change.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Very true. Very true. I do think sometimes, I think there's a paradox sometimes in relationships where the woman expects the man to change, but the man expects the woman to never change. You know? So she's like, oh, I thought you would grow out of this. You know what I mean? Because I chose you for these other reasons. And then he'll be like, you're not who you were before. And I think both, while I understand the validity, I think that expectation isn't healthy. I think when you choose someone, you should be open to them, open to the fact that they may change. But also understand the things maybe you want to change about them, or that you think even would serve them, may not change. Have you ever chosen a guy based on whether he would change his ways for you or for the relationship?
I think a couple times, and what you end up realizing is that I kind of come from the mindset as people never change and old habits, or like habits die hard. Yeah. So I've realized that people are kind of stuck in their ways, and, you know, we are creatures of habit. So it's me realizing, okay, I understand that is like your way of maneuvering through the world, and I might be very, very different to that. So it then just becomes like, for me, I'm just onto a different person. Yeah.
I definitely think that people can change, but they only change for themselves. I don't think they change for other people. You know, I think especially I think guys' timing is important. Has a guy ever expected you to change?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay. What was he expected you to do? Change about yourself?
This was a quite recent situation, actually.
Okay.
He was extremely traditional, like very, very traditional. Like, didn't want the women to work, etc., all that kind of stuff. Right. And I've obviously worked so hard to be where I am.
Amen. Big facts.
And, you know, my family have, you know, been supporting me in terms of like my career and stuff. And for me to let that go would it just can't run. Yeah. So I tried to communicate, and I was like, this is the reason why I'm so career driven and why my career means so much to me. Yes. And on the other side of that, with being a lawyer, it is very rewarding because you're able to help people in that aspect. And he just couldn't get his head around that.
Wow. So what, he expected you to like drop out?
He was literally like, okay, cool, graduate, whatever. And then like, you don't need to work, all this kind of stuff. And I was like, I hear that you want to be that masculine figure, but it's more of like a situation where I need to do it for myself. And, you know, if I'm able to have that education, I can open so many doors for myself. Do you know what I mean? And in the event that something does happen between him and I, and, you know, I'm not just stuck somewhere without any options in terms of my career.
No, 100%. I completely agree. I think there's, you know, because it sounds like you're very passionate about at least where you're going and the path that you're on. And passion is really attractive, like to both sexes. Yeah, sure, maybe most guys wouldn't necessarily choose or be attracted to a woman because she's ambitious, but he can be attracted to her because she's passionate. Like, passion is very attractive. So I'm very surprised that, I guess if he's super traditional, maybe, but I'm very surprised that he didn't find that kind of passion side to be like, oh, this is almost, you know, she's passionate about what she's doing and she's working towards that. Any last thing that you want to bring to conversation?
No, I feel like that's everything. We've covered a lot, actually.
No, we have. Did you tell your friends that you were coming on?
I did, yes.
Did they check out my content?
They did.
What did they say?
Do you know what? They were open to it.
That's a courtesy. That's a nice one. Well, listen, Alaina, we appreciate you coming on for sharing your energy with us. If people want to find you, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Alainatopia.
Thank you so much. Well, guys, go check out Alaina. Give us some likes, give us some follow, all that good stuff, all that love. And yeah, she's about to become a lawyer, commercialized. So if you get stuck in a few years, she's your gal. But thank you for coming on. We appreciate you. Guys, thank you for tuning in, and I will see you in the next episode.